just coming home to our breath for a minute and cultivating our motivation, which I'll lead you through. And then we'll have the talk and a short meditation and some Q&A, or at least the Q's. I don't know about the A's. Okay, so come home to your breath. Just watch your breath go in and out for a minute to calm the mind down. Before we begin, let's take a moment and cultivate our motivation and think that we will share the Dharma together this evening so that we can learn how to forgive ourselves, how to appreciate our good qualities and enhance them, so that we can increase our motivation to use these good qualities for the benefit of all beings and to make a positive contribution to the welfare of society. So take a moment and place your motivation very firmly within the context of having love and compassion for others and wanting to be of benefit to them. Okay, so tonight we're going to talk about forgiving ourselves, which is a very important thing. And actually, I think one of the biggest hindrances that Westerners in particular have to Dharma practice is a sense of low self-esteem. And often that is very linked in with not forgiving ourselves. In other words, we made a mistake, then we, instead of thinking I made a mistake, separating the person and the action, we begin to think I am a mistake and don't forgive ourselves for whatever mistaken action we did. And then that, when we get into that mental frame, then we just spin around ourselves in quite a self-centered way that actually not only is painful for us, but it really limits our ability to transform our mind, to practice the Dharma, to connect with others, to be of benefit and service to others. So it's really important to learn to forgive ourselves. So how do we do that? First of all, we're sentient beings, so making mistakes comes with being sentient beings. So until we become highly realized beings, we're going to make mistakes. So we have to learn to forgive ourselves from them. And like I said at the beginning, to separate out, there's the person who was the agent that made the mistake, and then there was the mistaken action. And those two things are two different things. Yeah, we are not our actions. From a Buddhist viewpoint, we have the Buddha nature, the Buddha potential. We can become fully awakened beings. So, if that's the nature of the mind, if that's our potential, then we can't at the same time say, I am a mistake, or that my mistakes are an inherent part of me. We have to see that the mistakes the, detrimental or harmful actions we did were one thing that we did at a certain moment in our time, but they are not our identity. They're not who we are. However, we do need to take responsibility for them. So we need to own up to them, and then repair them. We can do some purification practice. We can go to the other person and apologize, but we need to acknowledge our mistakes. And like I said, acknowledging our mistakes doesn't mean we blame ourselves and hate ourselves. It's just we made a mistake. So let's learn from it, repair the situation as much as possible, and then go on, And if we've learned from the mistake, then as we go on, we won't make, hopefully we won't do that mistake quite as many times as before until we get to the point where we're not doing it at all. Okay? Also, another thing I think that really helps in self-forgiveness is to be able to look at whatever mistake we made in the past and think of who we were in the past, because whoever we were is not exactly the same person that we are now. So there's a continuity between who we were in the past and who we are today. But we're not the same person. We've changed because, our bodies changed, our minds changed, everything's changed. We are not any kind of permanent self or permanent soul or anything like that. So we can look back at the person we used to be, and we understand that person well because we used to be that person. So we understand well what he or she were thinking, what challenges they were facing at that time. We understand what the limitations were for them, possibly either external limitations or the limitations in their own thinking, the limitations in their own emotional repertoire, feeling boxed in by certain emotions. So we have a good understanding of that person who we used to be. So it's quite good to be able to offer some empathy to that person and some kindness to that person. So instead of looking back at the person that we were when we made that mistake and saying, oh, you jerk, how could you do that? You're such an idiot, you're such a failure, that whole routine. Instead of doing that, talk to the person that we used to be and say, oh yeah, I understand you. Your mind was really overwhelmed by anger. Your mind was quite narrow at that time. You didn't see a lot of choices in your life. And you were operating from the viewpoint of, I need to make a quick decision, or I need to, be happy immediately. And so your wisdom wasn't functioning so well. So you made a mistake that was wrong, but I understand you. And, and I can offer you some empathy because I understand where you were coming from. And I can also offer you some compassion, because I know at that time you were suffering, either physically or mentally, but you weren't able to see things clearly. And, that's a situation worthy of compassion. So you look back on your old self in that way and offer empathy and compassion. And that, it's very good when you can do that. It completely removes all that self-criticism, and it brings a feeling of settling, settling the situation somehow in your mind, because you're taking responsibility, but you're having empathy and compassion for the person that you used to be. So it's bringing up some positive attribute in us right now. And the more we can show empathy and compassion to the person we used to be, then of course, the more we'll be able to show it to others when they make mistakes or do harmful things. Okay, so let's do a little meditation right now. Yeah, and we'll try and put this into practice. So take a minute, come home to your breath. And then think of some mistaken or destructive action that you did in the past that you have regret for. Think of a specific situation. And then think of the circumstances you were surrounding that situation. Were there limitations on you physically? And also, how about your mental state? Was your mind flexible at that time? Or was it fearful? Was it anxious? So think of how you were, the person that you were back at that time in the past. And as you do that, have a sense of understanding and compassion for that person that you used to be. To really offer some understanding to that person that you used to be. See how he or she did the best they could according to their abilities in that situation. And they did do some things good in the situation. And offer them that understanding for the mistakes they made. And really remember that the person and the action are two different things. And then come back in your own heart to that feeling of forgiveness, of understanding, some feeling of having brought that whole situation to a conclusion so that you learn from it and you can go on without being impeded by the past or by your feelings about the past, but really settling the situation with kindness towards yourself so that you can go on. So come back to that kind of feeling in your heart. Maybe while we're waiting for the questions to come in, I'll just make a few more comments. Yeah. So this kind of exercise, we went through it rather quickly because we only have a short time now. So I recommend you can do it, more later and really take more time with it. And it's also good to do it many times because each time we do it, it reinforces that feeling of I am not my action, I learn from my action, I can, I won't have to repeat it, and I can really have understanding and forgiveness for myself, and I can have understanding and forgiveness for others who do similar mistaken things because they're just like me, sometimes their minds are narrow, they're in difficult situations, they can't think clearly. So, instead of getting angry and critical at myself, similarly, instead of getting angry and critical of others, I'll approach things with an understanding that everybody's doing their best, even when they make mistakes, and that we can all learn from our mistakes and go forward in the future and, really use our good qualities then, not stumble so much on the mistaken attitudes and emotions that we sometimes fall into.
I have a question here from Sandy. Sandy says, I'm utterly amazed at your understanding of the human condition. Why is it that the past weighs so heavily and is not easily or readily forgotten?
Okay, so why does the past weigh so heavily on us? Because we keep remembering it. Somebody did something to us one time. Every time we remember it, we do it to ourselves another time. Or we did an action one time, then every time we remember it in the same narrow, confined, self-critical way, we implant that seed again in our mind. Yeah. So it has to do completely with our way of thinking. And that's why, if we can switch the way we're looking at the situation, then we won't look at it the same way. So when we think of it, it won't appear in the same way to us. Yeah. One of my books, Don't Believe Everything You Think, and also Working with Anger, both of those talk a lot about how to look at situations from different, more realistic and more beneficial perspectives. And when we do that, then we realize, the past is gone, and we stop making it concrete in our way of thinking, because we've changed our way of thinking. To continue with Sandy's question, is to remember that the past is not happening now. Yeah, it is not happening now. It's just our thoughts, And so because we're not thinking correctly, then the past seems to weigh on us. But when we can look at the past and see things as, that happened because of all these different causes and conditions that came together at that particular moment. So it's not a concrete event. It was just causes and conditions that came together, and then the event changed and went into something else. And so when we see it that way, there's more looseness in our mind. And then we can look at, okay, what were the causes and conditions that came from me? There may have been some karmic cause from previous lives. There could have been some action I did, some way I was looking at things, some way, something I said, so we see what was our responsibility in it. We own that. We, think of how we could do it differently in the next time, in the future. And then having learned from it, we can let it go. Yeah. And so, if we always are looking in the past with the mind that says, who's to blame? Either it's all the other person's fault or it's all my fault. And just having this whole thing of blame in our mind, that's really unrealistic, because it's just causes and conditions. Some came from this person, some came from that person, some came from me. We don't need to blame anybody. Yeah, we just need to see what came from us and learn from it and see how we can do it differently. Yeah, so all this kind of, I'm such a bad person and this happened, that happened, it's their fault and they aren't apologizing, or it's my fault and I'm a lousy person. All of that is just our garbage mind. It's our afflicted mind, When the Buddha talks about mental afflictions, that's what he's talking about. Those kind of very unrealistic, not beneficial thoughts that we are so habituated to that sometimes we don't even notice are going on. So that's the beauty of the Buddha's teaching, is that it helps us notice those thoughts and then learn to assess them, and then learn to how to see the situation in a different way and let those kind of thoughts go and replace them by something more realistic, more beneficial.
Rebecca says, I have a very hard time with this, and I've been practicing for some time and I feel like I'm making no progress. Can you speak to this?
Oh, yeah. Most of us feel that way. Because, especially in the West, we are so focused on the goal. It's like, I got to get there and I want to see progress. And that view of the situation becomes an impediment. What is a better way to look at the whole thing is, I'm just creating the causes. Yeah, all I'm doing is creating the causes. I'm content and happy to create causes. When the causes are ready, they will ripen into the result. Okay? Because we're always looking for the good meditation. We always want every meditation to be, some fantastic one. But you only get like a clear meditation after you've done many of them where you feel that you're not getting anywhere, because finding our way through the mental garbage, it takes time, it takes practice. It's not something that happens immediately. So I compare it to like, growing a garden. You plant the seeds, you're happy to plant the seeds, to fertilize the ground, to water them, but you don't dig the seeds up every day to see if they've started to sprout yet. You're just content to plant the seeds. And then eventually, things start to change. And they don't change like whammo. They change, very slowly. But if you really keep at it, then after a while, you can see the change. So His Holiness Dalai Lama always says, don't look at, what even 6 months ago or 10 months ago, but look at a year ago, look at 5 years ago, look at 10 years ago. And then you can see how you've changed and how you've grown. Yeah. So we have to have kind of a bigger, broader perspective and be content to with the process, enjoy the process of practicing and not be so focused on, I've got to have some kind of result. Just enjoy your practice, that's all. And just do it. And even some days you don't feel like doing it, you do it anyway, because it just plants the seeds. It reaffirms those good qualities in our own mind.
Suzanne says, I'm thinking of a situation a couple of years ago. I feel there may be an apology that wasn't given by me as clearly as it could have been.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if it's a good idea to bring up the situation again. There was a shift in the relationship with my daughter and me at that time that never seems to have healed completely.
Yeah. Okay, if you feel like something is still out of sync in it, then, and if you feel it would be helpful, then, go back to the person and say, what I said before I didn't express myself so clearly. I want to do it again now, and then say it again. But think of where the other person is right now. Are they at a space where they would welcome that? Or are they at a space now where it might just open something that has kind of been healed for them? But if you think that it's something that would also benefit them, then go back and apologize. If you think that it's not something that would, be helpful to them, then at least in your mind, in your meditation, make the apology. Okay?